I think that we have everybody here, so I can slowly start introducing you. If you could turn on your cameras, it would be great so that we could start to see you. Okay, perfect. Hi, Daniel.
Hello, great to be here.
Hi, David. I think that Jared and Romana are also with us. So
Hello.
I will just quickly introduce everyone and then give them the floor, because I'm sure you are all very excited to hear what our fantastic agencies are doing with computational antitrust. So we have today David Dorrell from the UK's Competition and Markets Authority. We have Romana Skácelová from the Czech Competition Authority. We have Gerard Giménez. Please correct me with the pronunciation. Okay, good. From the Catalan agency. And then we have Daniel Westrik from the OECD. So I will let each of you intervene for 5 to 7 minutes, and then we'll have, I'm sure, a very fruitful discussion. Who wants to start? Perhaps Romana?
Yes, hello. I would like to share my presentation.
Oh yeah, please do. The more visual, the better.
Hello, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank you for the invitation to this unique conference and opportunities to speak a little bit about our projects we're currently working on. On this slide, you can see all projects we are participated in. Briefly, I will introduce each of them, its purpose, goals, and etc. So, first project is DataCross 2. DataCross 2 is a researcher project co-funded by the European Union Fund, which aims at enhancing the DataCross prototype tool developed during the first part of the project to detect anomalies in firms' ownership structure that can flag high risks of money laundering, collusion, and corruption in the European single market. Tool will be tested in operational scenarios with a wide range of end users like law enforcement agencies, asset recovery offices, anti-corruption authorities, and also competition authorities. The potential of this project is to point out the risks of prohibited agreements in certain areas. We will be able to trace the real owners of the company and also obtain relevant information to reveal especially ownership structure. With this project, the office can be even more successful in bid rigging detection. Another project is Watson. The office is currently testing this project, which aims to gather all the information sources that our employees work with in a single platform so that it is easier to work with them. This tool should be able to search and find relevant results in many languages and filter unstructured data with the help of AI. So should be able to evaluate relevance in an intelligent way. Our employees will then...
We are still seeing your first slide. I'm not sure whether there's something wrong there. Perfect. Now we see them change.
Okay. So our employees will then have gathered conform in terms of efficiency and speed of searching in resources. So this, I hope you can see, this is a screenshot from the application, and I choose some query. There is 2 words, cartel and bakery, and you can see the results of this query, and in the left corner there are categories of the resources, and in the right corner is a piece of documents. So next project is certificates. We are cooperating with Czech non-profit organization TXP Association on the project certificates. It is a unique software program for an electronic verification of fulfillment of requirements for identification and evidence of ownership structure of legal persons up to their beneficial owners. This tool is still constantly being developed. The next project is strategy for electronic public procurement for the period 2022 to 2030. This project, we cooperate with Ministry of Regional Development in the Czech Republic. So the office is actively involved in the preparation of this strategy. Its key activities will consider mainly in methodological support or the provision of know-how of the field of the procurement or competition protection. Last not least, I would like to highlight another tool we're working on. It's a tool for bid rigging detection. A few years ago, the office did participate in a project that led to creation of a software tool to detect bid rigging. So we would like to use the experience from this project. We're working on our SQL database, which intends to join and all open data sources which we have in the Czech Republic. The main source we have is Public Procurement Bulletin, which is publicity available search engine of public procurement forms. To download data, we use web scraping tool called Prober, which was developed with the support of Masaryk University. We faces the problems with changes of web pages. If there is any change, we must revise Prober, and it consumes lots of time, and now it's not working properly. Another source is Contracting Authority Profiles, which contains useful information of competitors' bids, but there are tons of such profile, and it's not easy to extract this information. So this is our SQL database. You can see lots of tables we joined. For bid rigging detection, we use a tool called Software Detector. This software is in a form of R script, contains lots of functions, market statistics, and bid rigging tests. And you can see on the slide how many tests and statistics are in this software. So our future plans, currently we focused on extension of the input database for bid rigging detection, creation of more advanced tests for detection based on econometric tests and machine learning algorithm. So thank you for your attention. And if you have any question, feel free to ask me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Romana. We'll gather the questions at the end. Let's now move on to David, if he's ready and willing.
Yes, absolutely. Let me share my screen.
Of course, please do so.
Yes, thank you very much for the invitation to this conference. It's great to be able to be on such a great panel, and I think the opportunity to talk more broadly about the work of the CMA and the world of computational antitrust. In terms of, I'm just trying to move my slides forward. Yeah, in terms of some quick background on the data unit at the CMA. So I'm Director of Data Science, and the data unit is our data technology and analytics unit. This slide gives a brief timeline on the team. We're still a relatively new team within CMA, so we really started in earnest in January 2019, and we've been building a team since then, starting with data scientists, data engineers, and then adding behavioural science and a team of technologists. And then we also, through an internal merger, brought on board our digital forensics team. And from there, we've also then set up a e-discovery legal technology team as well. So right now, the unit is about 50 people within the CMA. So it's a substantial capability that we've built. I'll now talk briefly about three of the projects that we've undertaken that are really relevant to computational antitrust. Sorry, forgive me, my slides aren't moving forward. There we go. So the first area, which has been a major part of what our work has been focused on evidence review at the CMA. So evidence review at the CMA, like many competition authorities, relies on evidence collected from parties to support our cases across both antitrust and mergers. That evidence can be collected through dawn raids, where our digital forensic specialists go out and collect data, but it's more and more arriving into the CMA in the form of legal productions. The nature of the cases the CMA is undertaking is changing, so we're doing more and more digital cases, so cases involving digital markets, and the pure digitalization of businesses globally means that we are handling more and more evidence with every year. So we have, from a data science and data engineering and legal technology perspective, been focused on how we can make this process as efficient as possible. This slide, very simple slide, which demonstrates or shows a rather complicated system of pipelines that we've built. But within our cloud environment, we've built a dedicated portal for firms to upload evidence submissions. We've built an automated pipeline that processes those evidence submissions. And these submissions can be up to hundreds of thousands of documents, PowerPoints, PDFs, Word documents as well. And our automated pipeline unpacks the submitted evidence. It checks that it meets our criteria in terms of format and structure. And then that then allows us to automatically process the evidence into our evidence review platform. We're also able to manipulate the evidence and in terms of analyzing it through automated algorithms as it's processed through our pipeline. And that means that we can keep the core evidence, the documents that are submitted are maintained and the evidential integrity of the evidence is maintained. But we actually process, we take a copy of the evidence, we process it, and we have built algorithms that will score the documents, each of the documents, about whether they're likely to be relevant to competition issues. We also have algorithms that will extract key phrases from documents automatically, and also an algorithm that identifies whether the document is likely to be talking about the UK, which is obviously important when it comes to jurisdictional relevance. So these enrichments, say the core integrity of the evidence is maintained and we maintain all the forensic standards that you'd expect, but we're able to overlay additional metadata onto the evidence and make that available to our case teams when they start their review. And the real purpose about all of this is to give the CMA the capability of handling evidence submissions of 1 million documents, 2 million, 3 million documents, which is what we see on big antitrust and global merger cases these days. But also the ability to get into that evidence more quickly using machine learning as well. It's also worth flagging that we've invested very heavily in commercial software, and we are in the form of a product called Nuix Discover, which is a leading evidence review platform, and that allows us to deploy other forms of analytics such as continuous active learning as well. Another example of where we've deployed leading kind of data engineering and data science approaches is in our response to the COVID pandemic. So in the early stages of the pandemic, as in the UK, as we've seen in many countries across the globe, we saw a phenomenon of price hiking and price gouging on key products, ranging from things like hand sanitizer, toilet paper, pasta and core groceries. And the CMA, unlike some of our fellow competition and consumer authorities across the UK, isn't a consumer-facing organisation in the fact that we don't have a contact centre. We just have an email and address and a telephone number. But because of the issues in the UK and because of the CMOs being very proactive about putting out communications to businesses, very quickly consumers started contacting us directly. We went from receiving maybe 400 contacts a month to, at a peak, we were receiving 6,000 contacts a day. And we had to build a pipeline to process that evidence, again, starting with creating a public-facing web form. We built a pipeline that extracted the data from web form, used machine learning models to extract these names and entities from that data to allow us to analyze it. We used machine learning models to be able to categorize the complaints, the contacts into different sectors and different types of complaints as well. And this then allowed the CMA to get insight into what was happening within the UK market very quickly, and really drove how the CMA took forward its cases, and has led to us achieving many millions of pounds worth of benefits for consumers in terms of tackling price gouging and also major issues around refunds for cancellations as well. So that was a big success for us. And then finally, just to call out a different type of analysis and tools that we're building. So the UK has a business register called Companies House. It's mandated that all UK businesses register on that with Companies House. Unfortunately, well, from a data perspective, that data isn't always of great quality because there's no automatic validation and there's very specific legal powers for Companies House as an organisation over what they can do with the data. So we've been undertaking some major data engineering work to take all the registrations on the Companies House register and using advanced data engineering, data science techniques to link and deduplicate that data and to ensure that we have the best possible representation of company ownerships and structures in the UK. The reason for doing this is, as you'd expect, business registry data is something that we use all over the CMA. We spend money on commercial data sets that are derived from Companies House, where the private businesses, the companies resolve these issues. So there's an opportunity for us to be more efficient in how we work, but also because actually those commercial products don't always meet our needs. And one example of this was our recent state of competition report, where we looked at the state of competition across the UK, and we needed to have a really clear view of beneficial ownership and company structures in the UK to be able to really measure concentration and changes in market concentration in the UK. I'm conscious I've spoken rather quickly and covered quite a lot of ground, but I wanted to make sure I hand it over to my fellow panelists.
Thank you very much, David. It's very nice to see that you do so much for consumers, and this bridges nicely the discussion with the previous conversation about antitrust and the poor. And now why don't we move into Jared, and then we end with the OECD, which naturally brings everyone together.
Okay, so this is Gerard. I'm contracted by the Catalan Antitrust Authority. Me and my friend, we built this small data science consulting firm, and we were hired by the agency maybe a year ago. They thought that something could be built with all this public procurement data that currently is available, and that's really what we intended to do. My background is in economics, and I became a data scientist more or less on the job. So my background is not fully in antitrust law, but I'm learning a lot, and I found your presentations really interesting. So basically, what we intended to do, the first thing that we intended to do was just like, since there's a lot of public procurement data available at the Catalan level, and we're not taking advantage of it as we could, what shall we do? So then I said, okay, we can try to build algorithms. My background in statistics allowed me to apply some of them, which I will deal with them in the next slides. But obviously there were some challenges, and these challenges were mainly unstructured data, which comes from PDFs, and this is a big hurdle that we needed to overcome, because basically in order to detect this anti-competitive behavior, these cartels, we need to access these technical reports from these bids and from the contracts, and this was not possible maybe 10 years ago. Now with some tools available, this is already possible, and that's what we intend to do. And lastly, obviously, we need to find the right strategy to identify these anti-competitive behaviors, which deals with a lot of statistics and so on, which is the interesting part. So we started by building this shiny app. Since I'm more or less a statistician, I love R. So my tech stack is fully R, and I built this shiny app just to display the data in a more intelligent manner, just to make it easier for the antitrust authority to be able to get all the report of a certain company, see all the connections, see all the bidding offers, see the percentage of winning bids against this competitor, against this other, to basically have a grasp of what that company is doing. Then we spend most of our time building these algorithms that kind of finds clusters. Companies leave these traces in the prices that they made in the offers. Obviously, we're limited by the fact that this price that they put in the offer is readily available, and it's the best that we have right now. So it's what we're using, and we are employing several different strategies, such as the ones based in the bid price, range, variance, band for law. Sometimes we're using also cyclicality to see if there are companion offers, only to kind of trick the requirements of certain contracts, and also the market structure. Obviously, like we focus on sectors. We see the concentration. We also see the time series evolution to see if it has changed significantly, and then we kind of employ all this to detect these kind of clusters that are represented in this visualization that I'm sharing this. I hope that it's not too small. And lastly, which is the one that we're employing, that we're devoting more resources right now, we're building this tool which uses several AWS services such as Amazon Textract and Amazon Comprehend to extract intelligently data from PDFs, and this allows us to build this enhanced public procurement database, which then I hope that this will allow us to perfectly get a grasp of their behavior, get a better sense of their behavior in the sense of anti-competitive performance and anything that the authority can really use in their day-to-day, and make it easier for them to build cases, to investigate them, and just to improve the quality of the consumers in Catalonia in the end. So thanks a lot for your attention, and I'm more than happy to answer any of your questions.
Thanks, Jared. Great slides too, so well done. Now let's see what the OECD has to say.
Yes, so I am Daniel Westrik from the OECD Competition Division, and I'm going to present today a recent background note that we published on data screening tools for competition investigations. the paper focuses on cartel screening tools because we found those are the most common form of screens that authorities are using. And so, as just presented by Gerard, these are kind of typically empirical methods that identify patterns or anomalies in bid or price data to identify collusion. As well as the background notes, we had contributions from 16 competition authorities that you can see in the flags here, and held an agency-only roundtable discussion regarding some of the key issues. An issue that we had at the outset of us writing this background note was that there was relatively limited public information about competition authorities' current use of cartel screens. So the country contributions that you can find on the website are a unique and valuable source of public information on what authorities are doing in practice. And it complements quite nicely what you've done at the Computational Antitrust annual report. So I was briefly checking prior, and I think you have 14 contributions, we have 16, and only 7 actually overlap. So I think if you combine both, you can get a good picture for 23 authorities, which I think is quite nice for the community. And yeah, you can download the reports and the country contributions via the OECD website or using this QR code that you can see on the screen now. Thibaut's love of QR codes is infectious. So what have we covered, and what are some of the key findings in the report? And given the time limits, I'll be quite brief on each of the elements. So, but I hope this can maybe whet your appetite for the content of the paper and go and download it. So I think at the outset, it's important to acknowledge that cartel screening is a difficult exercise. And in spite of what Jared was saying is the case in Catalonia, for many of the competition authorities that we heard from, one of the key issues is access to data. And we found that most authorities were using screens on procurement data. However, often it was a very difficult task to separately coordinate with several procurement agencies. Sometimes the agencies were either unwilling to share data or didn't hold all of the relevant data required, or didn't store it in a usable digital format. So maybe a useful best practice guide for any authorities that still are going through this process is to potentially create a template of the kind of format and type of data that you'd want to implement cartel screening methods. So at least if the historical data doesn't exist, going forward, you can have a useful and reliable data source. Second, several authorities confirmed that they are now hiring data scientists and computer scientists to complement their traditional teams of economists and lawyers. And this might be a bit more difficult for some smaller authorities, but a lack of in-house expertise can be partially mitigated through international collaboration and an active international network. So we would encourage those smaller authorities to certainly try and reach out to more experienced authorities. In terms of the screening techniques, we found there was no real one-size-fits-all approach, which again, as Jared presented, there are a range of different methods that you can adopt. And the background note provides a review of the recent academic literature, and the country contributions, again, a great source of what authorities are actually doing in practice. In terms of the value of evidence from screens, we found they were usually used to open an investigation, for example, to justify a dawn raid, and normally they would be supplemented with more direct evidence to close the case. In terms of publishing screens, publicizing the work that authorities are doing on screens. There's an incentive to do so, of course, to have a deterrence effect for firms that are potentially going to form a cartel, or encourage the demise of cartels if firms indeed think that there's a greater chance of them being caught, but not publishing so much information as it's easy for firms to evade those screens. But in any case, many of the methods are quite available freely online in the academic literature anyway. And I think, as Joe Harrington was mentioning yesterday, particularly in terms of these behavioral methods, it's quite costly for cartelists to evade those screens. If they have to reduce their price, then they're foregoing some collusive profits. Although relatively limited still, there are several examples now from multiple jurisdictions with cases brought with successfully based on cartel screens. So, for example, Brazil, Mexico, Korea, Italy, and Switzerland. And finally, international cooperation is crucial because ultimately, as we've seen today, authorities are trying to solve the same problem fundamentally, and international cooperation can be an essential way to share expertise, code, and potentially even data. So competition, I mean, this is the last slide, I'll quickly wrap up shortly. Competition authorities undoubtedly face some difficult challenges to effectively implement cartel screens, but we think that the future is relatively bright. So over the last decade, and even more so in the last few years, there's definitely been an increased use and interest in cartel screens, both in competition authorities and also some private companies screening their own supply chains. And this is because there has been certainly increased availability and access to procurement data, a proliferation of screening methods in the academic literature, and particularly material advancements in terms of machine learning. And finally, there has been a relative decline in in methods such as, in terms of more receiving leniency applications, etc. And so there's definitely an impetus and desire for authorities to invest more heavily in more proactive screening tools like these cartel screening methods. So I've run out of time, apologies. I will leave it there. Thank you very much and look forward to the discussion.
So David, Romana, and Jared, which of the projects you have worked on you think has had the biggest impact on the day-to-day work of case handlers? What do you think has helped them the most from what you've done?
I can go first. I think the work that we have done around evidence review and evidence handling has had the biggest impact. In some ways, this is less overt and less obvious to kind of when we're talking about the outside world, but in terms of improving the efficiency and actually the effectiveness of how the CMA works, has been a really critical enabler of allowing the CMA to take on the major cases following our exit from the European Union.
Who wants to go next? Jared, Romana?
Yeah, I mean, in my case, I agree with David. I think helping the authority to get the evidence faster and in a more structured way, making it easier to search, to filter. I think these are kind of simpler tasks, meaning that it's not involving any type of fancy algorithms or data science, but it has been super helpful to them. And I hope that in the future my answer will change, meaning that I'll be able to say, yes, we have identified this or that cartel. But presently, it's true that I think that would be the thing I'm most proud of.
That's a great insight to show that we don't need that much technical sophistication to have a huge impact in practice. So that's something that we can think of for the future. Romana, would you like to add something?
Yes, I think it's very difficult to choose one because every has own purpose. But like I pointed in presentation, the project Watson is we call it like Google Plus. We can search in specific pages. So we use it in daily basis. If someone needs some information that he or she use this Watson software.
Okay, that's great to know. Now, based on the reports that we've done and that the OECD has done, we've seen that there's substantial overlap between the tools that you are developing. Are you planning to create any collaborative projects in the future? Is the OECD planning to foster such cooperation in the future?
So, thank you. Yeah, so I think that OECD is obviously a forum for exchange, for authorities to share experience and best practice. And at the roundtable discussion that we already held last week, we had offers from authorities to share code amongst each other and to have bilateral calls to present their tools and experience with others. So there aren't any, specific projects that we have in mind at the moment, but I think indeed these physical meetings often facilitate discussion, etc. And it's important to note it's not just the role of the OECD to do this. I think there are already some great existing networks in terms of email exchanges between data scientists at competition authorities and the ICN, of course, the great CMA data conference, and of course the Computational Antitrust project. So I think there are many different avenues for authorities to get together and share knowledge.
Yeah, for sure. There's plenty of opportunities for the agencies to collude for better antitrust enforcement. Do any of the others to share something?
Yeah. Well, firstly, Daniel, thank you for the shout out for the CMA conference. It was a lot of fun and a really enjoyable experience to get everyone together. To answer your question, Theodora, absolutely. Real opportunities for collaboration is something that, from the CMA perspective, we've been, and the data unit, been pushing and working with other competition authorities pretty much since day one of setting up the unit. I think it's inevitable that to start with, an awful lot of the focus has been on sort of knowledge sharing and experience sharing and comparing the kind of lessons learned and the scars that we've had about trying to build tools and capabilities in competition authorities. But now actually we are moving into a world of share co-collaboration or collaboration on and co-creation of tools and code. We've had partnerships and sharing with colleagues in Denmark and colleagues in the Netherlands. We shared information with Australians as well. So lots of opportunities, and I think it's something that we're keen to promote more and more. And in fact, just to call out that we open sourced our first package, Python package, which is our core web scraping capability, fully open to anyone publicly. But that's again something that we will be pursuing further, is actually kind of creating capability fully in the open.
That's terrific. Sounds like there's a solid cartel of agencies going on down there. Gerard, Romana, do you have any cross-border projects to share?
In our case, I think the bet of the Catalan Antitrust Authority has been done very recently, and we're very much open of collaborating and seeing all of you. It's making me think that we could benefit so much from this. And I hope that in the future others can also benefit from our work. So yes, I think we're completely open. I'm looking forward to also share all my code in Python or in R, and yeah, it could be a great opportunity.
Yeah, we're very happy to hear that you're open to share, since this is the philosophy of the Computational Antitrust project as well, to have everything open access. Romana?
Yes, I have same opinion like Daniel mentioned in presentation. It's necessary to share information and knowledge, everything. I think it's necessary for us to do this.
I'm very glad that we are all on the same page with this. And now I will ask a question which is perhaps a bit thorny. Do you see any room for working together with law firms in the future to create antitrust compliance tools? Or if not, why would that be problematic? Does anyone want to give it a try? I see David trying, so yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so on sort of antitrust compliance tools, I think if we compare a competition authority to a sectoral regulator, so when here in the UK we'd have the Financial Conduct Authority that regulates financial markets, Ofgem that regulates energy markets. I think it's much more obvious the opportunity for developing compliance tools in those kind of sectors, because you have companies offering the same services in a very similar way to, and a regulator that oversees them in a continuous way. Whereas for someone like the CMA, we are moving from market to market or from business to business, and we are applying the antitrust laws, the competition laws of the UK, but the way they're applied and the nature of that legislation can be different in different sectors. So it makes it more difficult. That said, it's something that we are keen to continue to look at and continue to work with, especially the legal community in the UK, around how we can better interact with them and make our cases flow more smoothly. So I gave you the example of kind of receiving evidence submissions from legal parties and how we process that. But we also have in the UK, as I think every competition authority will have a process where we complete an antitrust case. We have to disclose our evidence in court, and we have to go through a process of, as we call them, confidentiality representations. So agreeing redactions of documents within the evidence bundle to make sure that we're not disclosing confidential information. We are building a new tool and capability to handle that process from the CMA, and we're very much doing that in the open with law firms to understand how they can use the tool from their side, the implications of our design. So we recently had a seminar where we had over 60 representatives from law firms attend, where we talked about our plans and took their views on board and understanding. So I think there is plenty of opportunity for collaboration. I think the challenges around specific compliance tools is more tricky in the kind of antitrust, but for a competition authority like the CMA, which is cross-economy.
Thanks, David, for sharing that with us. Gerard, Romana, do you have anything to add?
To be honest, in my case, no. This is not of my competence right now.
What about you, Romana?
Well, I think it may be very tricky, because if we have some cases, it's not good enough for us. We share information with university and non-profit companies, so I think it may be a difficult way to do with law firms. And so we are very small competition authorities, so we have limited resources like personal or financial too.
Yes, we understand that there's an independence issue when it comes to collaborating with the industry. And I know that the OECD doesn't really target industry, but I'm wondering if, Daniel, you have anything to share on this note?
Yeah, well, I guess a slightly related question. In the building up to the background note, we actually also spoke to some private companies that were developing their own cartel screening tools, and they noted that the benefit being that then if they're screening their own supply chains, then complaints to authorities can be more informed than they would otherwise be. And I guess there's an issue related to, cat and mouse, that to the extent that private companies are developing these tools themselves, then maybe they can also benefit from it in a negative way to try and evade them when they're implemented by competition authorities. So, it's definitely a thorny issue, but I think at least within several academic papers, I think also Joe Harrington encouraging the adoption, not just by competition authorities, but more broadly in the community, would have a net positive effect. So yeah, you can certainly see it both ways, but it's certainly something to watch out for.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe in some distant future, we'll have some sort of do-it-yourself antitrust, which is fully automatized. But before we get there, let's move on to a question from the audience. So have the agencies seen any challenges in litigation or enforcement as to how they're using data analytics or AI in issues relating to, for instance, market power?
The short answer is no, we haven't. I think in terms of the work that we're doing around evidence review and handling and improving those processes, it's worth noting that we are, from the CMA, we're not at the kind of leading edge when it comes to legal technology when you look at what's happening in private practice across the globe. And what we're doing is not sort of really breaking new ground. The use of analytics and automation in evidence review is something that's been around for many, many years, and there are many legal precedents for it. I think also it's worth noting that we're not, in all these kind of tools and things we're building, we're not taking the human out of the loop in terms of the decision making. It's about, and it's the same, I think, applied to things like cartel screening tools as well. And that's something we are also interested in and working on. But we're not taking humans out of the loop. So ultimately, this is about helping humans get better access to information, process it more quickly. And often it's the analogy of, in the UK, in English, of finding the needle in the haystack is often used. And it's important to say that most sort of these tools aren't about helping you find the needle itself. It's about reducing the size of the haystack to allow your humans to get at the information that is more relevant more quickly. So I think often the hyperbole around what this is all about can sometimes sort of set people up to expect that there are lots of legal challenge, but actually it's about helping humans do their jobs more efficiently and more effectively, rather than replacing them with machines.
That's great to hear that it's technology plus humans and not either or. Jared, do you want to share something?
Yeah, I want just to reinforce what David is saying. I think this kind of technologies can be frightening, maybe if you're not very deep into it. But I think obviously humans are very much needed, and our job is to make the humans more productive, not to replace them. I think that's super far away in the future if it ever happens. So I think there's no resistance. Everyone is willing to use these new tools, and I'm at least in the Catalan Antitrust Authority, I'm super happy because they are really betting hard on this new era, we can say.
What about you, Romana? Are you replacing humans at the Czech agency or not yet?
Not yet, unfortunately, I think. But I think we don't have any cases where there's any problem with data analysis. We use data to support our cases, but it's not the main evidence in these cases. So we just support analysis. So that's it.
Okay, so for the antitrust lawyers tuning in, it's good to hear that we will be useful in the future as well. Now, just to give you the chance to have some concluding remarks, if we were to invite you again next year, what do you hope you will have achieved in the meantime? What are your plans for the immediate future? Let's have a go at it. Do you want to start, Daniel, perhaps?
I mean, I guess I would just hope that, I mean, there's not some immediate work that we have related to this in the near future, but just the hope that authorities will indeed, there'll be greater international cooperation, and that will mean that there's less duplication of effort, and that these kind of tools and methods can spread to parts of the world where maybe there are fewer resources and authorities are a bit more resource constrained, such that we can have as broad an impact as possible.
Yeah, it would be indeed great to see more global South, global North cooperation in this field.
Yeah, I would definitely echo Daniel's hope for the next year. I do think collaboration and sharing of knowledge in this space is going to be very important, and definitely the point around competition authorities who have less resources and fewer people as well is very important. I mean, from the CMA perspective, I think our ambitions for the coming year is to continue to really embed the kind of capabilities and tools that we're building in the work of the CMA. We've always aimed to kind of create a new profession within a competition authority to kind of complement lawyers and economists, and that's something which we have reached that point where data and technology professionals are a new profession in the CMA and seen like that as well, which is great. So really kind of embedding what we're doing, it becoming more business as usual to use tools and in the day-to-day work, and it not being seen as a novel thing. That would be a good thing to get to in the next year.
I hope we will get there in the next year. Jared?
Yeah, on my side, I would say the same. I would love to collaborate internationally or even nationally, because it's not that straightforward to get to share code and knowledge between agencies inside of Spain, and I think this is just like a great limitation. So yeah, on this side, collaboration, and on the other, more technical stuff, like I would love to successfully build or improve the current OCR technology that we have. I think this is absolutely key to improve the data that we have right now, and I'm sure that we will get to it, and maybe next year I'll be able to say that we're able to detect cartels much easier, hopefully.
Yeah, we'll hold you accountable to that next year. So if you haven't achieved, make sure to be ready to be punished. Romana, what are your plans for the next year? Or your ambitions, perhaps?
Yeah, our ambitions is to have more data, or more, not just poor data like we have now. So I hope someday I can share our experience with quality data, and so our plan is to obtain data from our projects and detect maybe some bid rigging cases. So it's from us.
Okay, thank you very much to everyone for sharing with us your projects, your plans, your thoughts. It was a pleasure to host you here, and it's very nice to see how computational tools are actually a reality and not just a project for the future. Now I'll give the floor back to Thibaut, and yeah, thanks again for joining us. It was a real pleasure to have you here.